an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, episode 28, Father. Not the father, just father. In this episode, we meet Father, but this didn't help at all. I thought meeting him would clear some things up. Nope. Not a thing. Genuinely more confused than I was before. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Oh, hey! Max is in the chat. Max isn't able to make it usually, but hi, Max. Delightful to have you here. How you doing? You get to see how much I mess with my hair while I record in real time. So, I think last episode, I was a little bit too preoccupied with the fact that it was a clips episode that didn't really move the plot forward to properly appreciate the fact that we were on the cusp of actually meeting Father. And this episode, I was actually really looking forward to it. And when we start it and we see that it is Hohenheim without glasses, in his dream, I was like, okay, wait. Oh, hold on. I was trying to piece things together, thinking, let me see if I can figure this out before we get the explanation. And I didn't need to worry about that because, as it turns out, we don't get an explanation. We get Father going, oh, Hohenheim. Wait, he has kids? I didn't know that. Okay. Well, I mean, you look like you've got some broken bones. Do you want some help with that? Wait. Hold on. What? Wait. Okay. Look, there is no... Okay. So the thing is, I can't... Here's my issue. If this dude doesn't even know, it's not even that he's oh, I look like Hohenheim, I know. He goes, are you mistaking me for someone else? That's what he doesn't even bring up Hempstuhl himself. He's just you think I'm somebody, clearly, from the way that you're acting. Which means he doesn't know about Hempstuhl intimately in the way I would have assumed they'd be linked because of the fact that they look identical. And I don't think I am to be faulted for assuming that. They look exactly the same, except that this guy is maybe paler. I think that might be the only thing. Michael says, I'm assuming the fandom calls this guy Fohenheim, right? That is pretty good, Michael. I have to give you that. Yeah, Candace says, that's the best pun you've told, hands down. I have to agree. I'm going to take that, Michael, and I'm going to cut the part where I give you credit for it, and I'm just going to pretend that that's mine. So get ready for that. That's the power of editing. So, guys, what the fuck then? Because Hempstuhl has a dream where this dude is arguing with him in the spirit that he actually holds in this episode. So Hempstuhl is aware of that guy, but that guy isn't aware of Hempstuhl. How does that work? Like, okay, so here's my wild theory, and I love this because it's absolutely not true, and it really doesn't make any sense if you like look at it for longer than a minute. But Hohenheim underwent some weird transmutation, and it broke him in two pieces. And one of him is like the real emotional, like he's just like, I'm the emo one, and I'm Bones from the show Bones, who's, if you're not familiar, very literal and very intellectual and doesn't really like have a lot of empathy at times when she should. That's what I'm going to go with. But the thing is, even if that were true, fucking Foenheim, as I will call him now, thank you, Michael, doesn't know about Hemstool. And he should, if that's where they come from. So what? I mean, again, I thought about the fact that maybe Hemstool was himself a homunculi, and the father, perhaps, a homunculi as well. But Hemstool had kids, and as far as we know, that's not possible. Now, I say as far as we know. I am perfectly aware all kinds of things that I take for granted as being the way it works in this show can turn out to not be true, because we just have that happen repeatedly. If that's the case, though, anybody could be a fucking homunculi. So, like, having kids, I like having that anchor to hold on to and be like, well, okay, here's a way that I can, like, prove that this isn't, you know? Again, we had that with Bradley, though, and it turns out that his kid is adopted. I do not think that Al and Ed are adopted. And here's why. Because all of them, including the Al inside the portal, look like a fucking L'Oreal ad. And I just don't think that's an accident. They are genetically linked by their glorious manes of blonde hair, and that's just fucking science. So I just, that is the part that really threw me for a loop. This guy doesn't know who that is. And he seems so detached from everything that's going on in a way that makes you almost feel like he doesn't care. But then when Ling gets factored into the equation, all of a sudden you start to see this like acidity come out that is much more similar to the way that we saw him behaving in the dream that Hohenheim was having. Now, you know what? I'm saying that Hohenheim had this dream and that it was about Foenheim, and it certainly, like, it clearly was. But what if Hemstool isn't actually, like, aware of Hohenheim? What if this is, like, a subconscious thing that he, like, kind of remembers, but not fully? Is that anything? I don't know what to think about this, you guys. Okay, I'm going to back up. We're going to start from the beginning. Let's just do that, because I'm not being helpful here at all. Okay, episode 28, Father. Reminder that Funimation makes me watch a little opening thing, and it turns the sound all the way up to high every time I start a new episode. It turns it up all the way to high. Listen, I just wish every streaming platform would just rip off Netflix. Netflix got it right. They got it completely right. And everybody else is just trash in comparison. They may have better content or whatever, but just in terms of the platform itself, Netflix is flawless, and it's just really frustrating to use anything else. So we get the new theme song. Reminder, guys, that the theme song for this, like, new arc, is it a new arc? Is that really what we would call it when a new theme song shows up? Like, what is it? Or does this count as a new season? This show doesn't, like, it's not broken up into seasons on a lot of the platforms that I've seen. So I'm not exactly sure how they decide when a new theme song shows up. But I had forgotten when I started this episode that we got a new theme song last week, and it just startled me so bad because it's, like, somehow louder, I think. But yeah, so we start this episode with Al walking into this weird, creepy place and following Gluttony. And Gluttony is just waving his arms and yelling, "Hello, Father, I brought you a human sacrifice." And I love Al saying, "Wait, what? Where? This is happening too fast." For some reason, Al saying this is happening too fast really struck me. Like, it's one thing to go into something being like, I'm going to risk it all and, figure it out. But then you actually are faced with the person that you're like here to meet. That's the whole point. And you're like, I'm not ready though. Fucking relatable. So he looks up at this guy and we get the flash of the family photo where his head was cut off by the corner piece, which is so funny to me still. And Al has a moment of, and then Gluttony just starts to get ripped apart from the inside. Do you guys know how mad I was? Look, I do want everybody here for this. Don't get me wrong. I want the family reunited. I want all of this to be like, I want Al to not have to like explain all of this after the fact. But the fact that we just get this moment of like, that sure looks like Hohenheim, and then the interruption of Gluttony screaming his fucking head off, by the way, as he gets ripped in half from the inside. That just, it felt like such a tease. And that shit goes on for a minute. And I felt bad for Gluttony. Like, the guy doing the voice acting for him really sells the pain and everything. It was awful. I hated this part so much. Especially because, like, the portal opening, it's sort of like the eye in his stomach starts to bleed. It's a weird thing. But anyway, so Envy comes out first. Al and Ling are, like, tangled up in Envy's limbs and heads and whatnot. I love that I had forgotten that Al doesn't know that this is Envy. So we have this moment of Father saying, "Oh, Envy," and Al being like, "What?" And then he finds he finds Ed, and he's so excited and he starts hugging him so hard. And like they go off camera for a second and you just hear Ed going, "Your spikes are poking me." And I really loved, especially right before he picks him up, when him and Ling do the little fist pump. They fist bump, not pump. There's just something just so understated about that, considering what the fuck they just went through. So yeah, he grabs him. "You're hurting me. I'm so happy you're alive. Your spike is poking my ribs." So Ling is basically the Cedric Diggory in this equation, where Father is just like, "Kill the spare." And Ed has to be like, "Wait, hold up, what?" And what is so interesting about this is that Ling just straight up is like on board for what the Father is doing. This is so fascinating to me. I'm jumping ahead a little bit too much, but overall, we just have like the introductions of all of them. Father looking at Ed and saying, "I didn't even know he had kids," and he pats him on the head, like, if you are indeed his progeny, then why is it that let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. You go by the name Elric. And Ed says, "Well, that is my mother's name." It didn't even occur to me about the fact that they aren't sharing a name with their dad. But Edward and Al Elric is so much better than Edward and Al Hohenheim. Like, I mean, come on, right? Where has he been spending his time? That's what did we say? What did I come up with very, very smartly on my own? Hohenheim? Thank you, me. That was such a good idea that I had. Hohenheim asks, where has he been spending his time? That was the one that really like made me go, okay, hold on. Because it's one thing to be like, oh yeah, I recognize that name. I didn't know he had kids. It's another thing to like not have any idea what this person has been doing or where they've been. I don't really like, he knows enough to want to know the answer to this question. Why? What does it matter? Like, And Ed says, who are you? And why do you look exactly like him? And this dude just straight up doesn't answer any questions. The way this dude is operating with everyone in the room, it's like me watching a TV show. He's like acting like he's not really part of this and takes a step back and is just like, that's really weird. I thought such and such, but perhaps another thing is true. I could be wrong about that. I suppose it could be this thing. This is just... to think he has children now. It would appear you're injured, and you're missing your left hand, aren't you? He just puts his hand on Al and makes a brand new hand, and then fixes Ed's broken arm and broken ribs. He doesn't do anything to initiate this alchemy, and there is no equivalent exchange. Neither of them can figure it out. Like, how is this even possible? Because Al is like, my armor didn't thin out at all. Because you'd think that if he's pulling metal from somewhere, it would come, millimeters would sort of decrease all over the armor to compensate. That doesn't happen. And he says, I consider you two to be vital resources. You must both stay alive and healthy. Look, guys, if y'all ever get called vital resources by somebody, just leave, just go, depart. Nothing good is coming from that. Look, I get that. Well, in this context, nah, I don't like it. There's just like, there's something sinister. There's an underlying, I don't like it. So, yeah, there isn't any equivalent exchange. And this is when Ling says, you aren't human. What are you? Fucking Fohenheim says, I could ask who you are, but honestly, I don't care. You can go ahead and eat him. There is something so much more jarring about having him looking at Ed and Al and being like, oh my God, you guys. Oh, you have a boo-boo. Are you okay? Hold on. Let me get something for you. And then immediately turning to Ling and being like, die, please. I mean, I really love how those are back to back like that. It just underlines everything. And Ed says, you want to keep us happy, so don't kill him. And he's like, you being happy that he's around doesn't make him more useful. So I don't think so. And this is when Al is finally telling Ed, this is the guy that the homunculi call their father. And Ling says, I don't like him. I can tell he looks down on humans and calls us fools. And this is when this dude has the most baller line. I can't even be mad about it. He says, when you notice an insect on the ground, do you stop to consider it a fool? The life of an insect is so beneath you. It would be a waste of your time to even consider judging it. Wow. Do you know what, though? Look, I get what he means, and it totally works. It really works. Like, it's a really nice reframing of everything so that it's like, it's not even that he's cold-hearted. It's that we are just objects. Like, there is the idea of involving emotion, just, it doesn't make sense to him, you know? But I would be lying if I said that I have not watched ants doing their little work and been like, that's Larry. Larry's part of the supervision. And that's Chuck, and Chuck reports to him. And that's Margaret, and Margaret is the hardest worker, but she can't deal with these two guys. So look at her. She's taking the long way around because she just doesn't want to deal with their bullshit in their offices right now because they just don't stop talking. So Margaret's going this way to get the stuff. I have created entire, like, short screenplays watching ants. It's just a thing that people do about animals and sometimes totally inanimate objects. We need to assign things personhood to feel connected. And it doesn't always work out in our favor because then it makes a lot of stuff like more difficult in the end. But there you have it. So, B. Moore says, I judge ants pretty harshly when they start burrowing holes in my walls. That's fair. That's fair. Look, I'm probably he would also feel a way if humans started burrowing holes in his walls. Like, I think that once it reaches that point, then yeah, he would stop to consider them. But yeah. And when he says this, Ed slams his hands together and uses his alchemy to, like, shove a wall towards this dude. I'm taking you down. I don't care how many cronies you've got. So, what's weird here is that Ed uses his alchemy several times, and he wraps him up in what looks like sorts of bands of metal that come up out of the ground. This is when there's an attack from Envy, and Ling starts to go after Fohenheim, and Al is just watching all of this fucking pop off, and it's just like, what the fuck? Ed's shoving of rock into Hohenheim's face. Fohenheim. Excuse me. And then, although, you know what, guys? I'm automatically calling him Hohenheim, and I kind of feel like he's Hohenheim, and then their dad is Hempstool. Because he's not Hempstool. It doesn't fit. Without the glasses, he's not hipstery anymore, you know? Plus, he's not, like, wearing, like, the vest or whatever the fuck. So, yeah, I think I'm just going to kind of call him Hohenheim and then call the other guy Hempstool. And that's not correct. And I know that. But y'all just bear with me because that's how I roll. But, yeah, this dude has absolutely no reaction. Ed slamming him in the face, and later on, Scar comes in and grabs him by the face the way he do. And this dude is not only unmoved as it's happening, literally does not budge, but begins talking about how interesting Scar's fighting style and alchemy is, with Scar's hand still pressed over his face. There is something about it doesn't fucking matter. That makes him seem a lot more like a robot or something. You know what I mean? This is part of why I'm like, is he a homunculus? Eventually, what is her name? Oh my God, the little girl, guys, help me out. I keep wanting to say Ming Wei. But she comes in and is like, that guy, that's where the bad feeling is coming from. And he's like human, but not human. Well, human, but not human feels like that has been homunculi. If he is, though, why is he just trying to create others? Is he thinking that homunculi may take over the world? Is he trying to basically replace human beings? Is this like an AI sort of story? It doesn't feel possible, though. Making a fucking, like, Philosopher's Stone is too difficult. It doesn't seem like even sacrificing the entire population, that you would get more than like 2 stones out of that. And ruling over everybody, I mean, he's like accomplished that already, essentially, through Bradley. The ruling of the people doesn't feel like that can be the payoff. If that were it, he'd be done. But Bradley is here to start some shit with other nations. Envy was put in place to start a war. So, like, for what? As an excuse to kill these huge populations for their experiments? Is that it? Because it feels like we don't need an excuse if we're this powerful. I just don't really... I don't know. So this is when we get him again using his alchemy without having to do anything. He just like stamps his foot and there's this wave of like red light. And everybody is sort of looking around like, wait, what the fuck? And far away, Hempstool is on that fucking like cliff's edge near the place where he fell asleep and had his little dream. And that rush of energy, it's like it gets his attention. It's like he can sense it. Did Hempstool like make a double of himself? Because he was like, I could really use somebody to like watch the boys while I do my paperwork. And then it's like multiplicity and the guy he made just like kind of sucked. That would suck, man. Like, everybody wants a double of themselves so that they can get twice as much done, right? Or is that just me? Whatever. But it would just be so annoying if you were able to do that and then the double of you was just not what you wanted. It wasn't actually a double of you. It just looked like you, but it acted like totally differently. How irritating. If that happened, would you be willing to kill yourself? Like... kill the double of you? I feel like it'd be hard to kill somebody who looks like yourself. Maybe it wouldn't. Depends. But yeah, I don't know. I just think about how great it would be to have somebody else to deal with my shit sometimes. But, you know, what can you do? So yeah, Hempstool is way far away, turns and looks. We also have Scar and May, says Kyle. It's Mei Chen? Is it Mei Chen? They are fighting, and in that burst of energy, they stop and look at each other as well because they can feel it all the way where they are. And all the creatures that they're fighting have sort of stopped and are looking at them like, Dad's mad. At this point, Mei Chang, thank you, Be More. I don't know where I'm getting Mei Chen, but I feel like I jumped at that name last time too. Mei Chang. This results in Al and Ed no longer being able to do their alchemy. I cannot tell you all how much I dislike this turn of events. I'm covering Mistborn with Miles for patrons. If you're interested, go to patreon.com/unspoiled and become a patron. And I'll tell you what, I have said that in every story where people have like particular abilities, there comes a point where their ability is taken away. It has to happen for them to like grow as a character, you know, and overcome something that they have become dependent on as sort of a crutch to get them out of certain situations so that they can use their mind, you know, and not get too comfortable. And I appreciate that as a storytelling device. I think it's absolutely necessary in a lot of cases. And as much as, you know, all of that is true, I fucking hate it. I hate it every time it happens. You know why, too? I think I've kind of pinpointed why I hate it so much. Our lives are filled with incompetent people. And it's just really nice to have a character that's like good at something. And so when that gets taken and you have to watch them fumble around, unable to defend themselves or accomplish a goal. It's just too much like real life. I don't want that. Give Jaime Lannister his fucking hand back, for the love of God. And again, Jaime grows as a person in a way he probably would not have were he allowed to keep his hand. Doesn't mean I like it, because I don't. I don't like it when Harry breaks his wand and he pulls out his broken wand that he tries to tape together with Spell-A-Tape. Dislike, don't care for it. And I don't think Ed and Al are permanently disabled and unable to use alchemy. I believe that whatever he did is either temporary or specific to like being near him. I may be wrong about that. Either way, though, this moment being the one where they can't do anything to defend themselves sucks. This is not what we want. B. Morris says, it was a great visual element that Ed and Al failing to do alchemy makes it look like they're bowing in supplication instead. Yeah, B. Morris, it's funny you say that, because for a second I kind of thought that was what was happening. It takes a moment after they like are on their hands and knees before they look at each other and go, wait, why isn't anything happening? Hold on a second. And they're both like sweating and they're just thinking, what the fuck is going on? And then they collapse because Envy comes up behind them and just smashes them to the floor, while Gluttony smushes Ling down and eats Ling's sword, which truly, how fucking annoying. Envy then says, you lower life forms, you speak of power, and you think you own the world. You don't even know what that power is. And then you have the arrogance to assume you're the one who's in control of this power. You're like a bad joke that keeps getting dumber. I honestly feel really attacked right now, and I don't appreciate it. Like, truly though, it is a thing. We really think if we figure like a part of something out that we know what's going on. Bless our little tiny souls. And at this point, Ed is like, you told me that you would explain what was going on if I got you out. And Envy is like, oh, yeah, no, you're nothing. I did not make a deal with you. So this is what I was afraid of. I think I even said when he made this deal, I was like, I'm not sure how much I trust Envy to actually explain. I would want to demand that payment up front. And I guess we just didn't have time to waste, or we also needed Envy's like actual Philosopher's Stone to accomplish the thing. So Ed would have probably had to play nice either way. But it's always a bummer when somebody's like, oh yeah, that agreement that we came to, I'm not going to give any shits about that now that it's over. So just so you know, you probably want to let it go. And Envy, I should mention, is in their like real form throughout this entire conversation, which I truly hate. Fucking Father says, Envy, you talk far too much. And Envy just goes, oh, sorry. And shuts up. And I think, honestly, that was the moment when I was the most scared of this guy. Nobody has gotten Envy to shut the fuck up. That's like getting me to shut the fuck up. Good luck. If you get me to shut the fuck up, you're probably somebody that we don't want to be dealing with. I'm just saying. It's not easy. And I don't just do it. If I shut the fuck up, it will be after a snarky fucking reply. I will just act out like a child. I will not just say, oh, sorry. No. That just really, for me, made me go, oh, God. So, this is when the Father says, maybe you could be useful to me after all, to Ling. And he touches his forehead, and a fucking eye appears, And all of this, like, apparently blood begins to pool around the eye and pour out. And this is like the material that we saw in the experimentation with Wrath in that, like, scene where it's rejected by somebody. So Envy says, yeah, if the body accepts it, then a homunculus is created. And it's more common for the stone to overpower the subject and kill them. Ed says, I'm not going to let you do this to him. And he's struggling against Envy. And this is the part where it's so great. I loved this. Ling tells Ed, dude, back off. You know why I came here. And, oh my God, I forgot about the part where Ed pulls a gun. And Envy has the face that's looking down on Ed that he would shoot, start crying and, like, essentially begging for its life. And honestly, I just cannot, with everybody being so swayed in the moment by Envy's transformations. Guys, you have got to see past this shit, man. Look, I know it's hard. I have trouble just being the mean guy in video games. Like, I don't like doing it, but this is life or death, for Christ's sake. Now, granted, again, this is the thing that Ling tells him to, like, put the gun down, stop it. This is what I want. But just, I just can't understand how this works as well as it seems to on everybody. I just don't. It's almost like foolproof. It doesn't seem like there's almost anybody it hasn't worked on. And for me, I would just be so angry. It would just spur me, you know, and I want to meet somebody who has that reaction. But anyway, so yeah, Ling says, this is exactly what I want, so stay out of it. I came here to get a philosopher's stone. That was the whole point. And now this guy wants to give me one. So yeah, I'm not turning this down. And I love Father being like, this is new. Usually people struggle against it. Okay, well, let's see what happens. And he drops it onto Ling's face, like onto a cut. And then begins Ling's screaming and his weird, like, bendiness of all of his limbs as a bunch of lightning, you know, the transmutation animation begins around him. And then we get something cool because we go, like, into his head and see what's going on inside as this is happening to him. I love too, like, as this is all happening and he's, like, bleeding and screaming, he still manages to, like, tell Ed, don't fucking interfere. Don't do anything. I told you, they don't know who they're dealing with. So we go, like, inside his bloodstream and we see him being, like, pelted around. And then all of a sudden, it's like we've got Spider-Man or Venom. It's a more of a Venom-shaped face, but it's a very, like, Spider-Man color scheme. And it's Greed. And Greed is just like, oh, this guy? I'm supposed to use him? Come on. Just, okay, just hand over your body. I guess I'll have to make do. And Ling says, all right. I love this so much. When he says, oh, yeah, sure. The face, like, one eye closes. And, like, he's looking at him like, wait, hold on. And there was just something about the weirdness of this animation. It's just so funny. And there's also, like, this voice actor gives me a really strong, like, Deathpool a little bit. Deadpool? Deathpool. There's, like, a sort of Ryan Reynolds-iness to it that feels really, what's the word I want? Irreverent, I guess. And because that voice, like, paired with this face felt really weird. It was all just, so yeah, he says, yeah, no, I freely consent. Go ahead. And he's like, people reject me normally, you know? And Ling is just like, I mean, I'm the future emperor of Xing. I know who I am, and I am big enough to hold a lot of you. So, yeah, go ahead. And Greed says, well, don't try to change your mind. And he says, I'll never change my mind. My vassal lost her arm helping me search for all this. I couldn't face her again if I came home empty-handed. I need this power. I need it to protect, to provide for my people, and to take my place as ruler, and I accept all of the risks. And Greed says, your avarice is certainly appealing, but let's see if your stomach matches your appetite. And then we go back outside his body, and he's doing a bit of a back bend here. I think that's called camel pose in yoga class. And then he comes back to himself, and he's like, yo, what's up? I have this body. Not bad. Okay. And Ed is like, Ling? And he's like, Ling. Oh, no. No, Ling is not here anymore. I am so surprised at how jarring it was for me to look at Ling and get a different voice coming out of his mouth. One wouldn't think with a character that's like, Ling hasn't been a part of this cast for that long. I don't feel like I got particularly attached to him, really. But a different voice coming out of him really does feel wrong. I was just like, what? Oh, this is so weird. Yet it was well done. It was very effective. And I do like the fact, too, that he does have a different voice. Like, when you do something in live action, oftentimes you just have the actor playing a different thing. And maybe their voice has a different sort of tone, or their cadence changes, or there's just like vocal tics or mannerisms that are different to signify that they are a different person. But it's pretty rare that you just have a different person's voice coming out of their mouth. And usually that's because the actor can pull it off without needing to do that. It's probably a lot more difficult in a lot of ways. But I really just, this is so creepy, you know? And I'm into it because Greed sounds super fun. I'm not going to lie. Like I said, he's just very... he's just very Ryan Reynolds. I don't know. I'm just saying. Okay, so this is when we have the Fullmetal Alchemist. And then we see Greed, and he's got his same Ling face, but he's got that weird smile and his claws. And Ed asks, are you the Greed from before? And I was so glad he asked that, because I was also like, does Greed remember anything? And Greed says, what do you mean? And they're like, you don't remember us. Oh, so you must have met like a different Greed. Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense. But no, I'm not the Greed you knew. And this is what is really fun for me, is like the idea that we're going to bring back this sort of being, but they're not who they were. They don't have the memories, and maybe not even the same personality. Like perhaps the person who they took over influences the way they manifest. And I don't know if that's part of it or not. Maybe this is just completely up to Father. And he can be like, this time I want my Greed to be a little bit more funny, level-headed, charming. You know, like, I don't know. But this has got me thinking about lust. And if we brought lust back, what would lust be like now? And lust's body didn't seem to be, because lust says in the conversation with Roy, I am human. And I was like, you're running on a fucking philosopher's stone. And you can like make your arms into sharp, pointy objects and reform yourself. You're not human though. But maybe lust meant I was made from a human? I mean, how do you choose? You just go out and find like the hottest person you can find, I guess, for lust, and just be like, smoking hot. Yes, okay, that's the one, you know? Which I guess like that's the real question that I have with all of them, because it felt like they were saying Bradley was the first one that was a combo of human and homunculi. So I don't think that's really what the deal has been with them. I think Ling might be the only other one other than Bradley, if I'm not mistaken. That sounds like the way it works from what they've said. I might be wrong, though. I don't know enough. But anyway, this what I really like about this, too, is we're getting another version of what greed as a concept can be. And that's something I really enjoy. This is a theme also in a book series, that there is a character who is like endlessly ambitious and always wants more and is never satisfied and is striving all the time. And that kind of character can be made to seem either relentless and hardworking or threatening, greedy in this way that's sort of like, you know, seen as a negative. And I feel like when we talk about people being hardworking, we don't usually express that as a type of greed. It's often seen as a virtue inherently, that you are just a very driven person. But there is a level of greed underneath pushing yourself all the time really hard because you want something so badly. And you're putting yourself, your health, your well-being on the line to get it because that's how much you want it. And I feel like we use the word greed and it almost always is just inherently a negative thing. But I like getting to see that greed is in this kid's heart and it's not negative. It's a part of his feeling of responsibility, you know? And I don't know. I think that's a neat and a different way to look at it that you just don't see very often. So this, yeah, he says, well, it was interesting. He gave up his body with like no fight. And Ed says, you're lying. Ling would never do that. And I'm like, Ed, you were there when he told you to back off. Ed, baby, sweetie, hun, have you been listening at all? You watched him surrender. You watched him do that right now. Like, what are you not getting about this? He just keeps arguing about it and then it's just like, answer me, Ling. I'm like, dude, Ling isn't, you can't just yell at this guy and then get Ling. Like, that's not, he's not just hanging out in there on his Xbox waiting for somebody to call his name. It's fine. This is when May and Scar show up. And she says this feeling, it's coming from that man. He's a human, but also not. And then Scar walks forward and says it doesn't look like any of them are human. Xiao Mei comes running up and jumps into her arms. And then this is when May finds out which one of this crew is Edward Elric. Y'all, she's acting like she got catfished. This is so funny. We get to see all like this montage of the fantasy that she had about what it was going to be like to meet him. And eventually, of course, they would just like have this epic romance. And it's very like chaste in a lot of ways. But I can't get over how personally she takes it that he doesn't look like what she expected. She is so disappointed. We've got her running on the beach. We've got them horseback riding, sunset and eating dinner, and him like kissing her on the forehead, and then her just bursting into tears. How dare you toy with the feelings of a maiden, you human microbe. I swear to God. Look. This is like... Have you guys ever listened to a podcast? And don't you dare say mine, because I will not react well, okay? So just like forewarning, don't be cute. Just saying. But have you ever listened to a podcast and somebody has like a great voice and you're like, oh, they sound hot. And you just like kind of get attached to this image in your head based on their voice. And then you finally take the time to like look up who they are, and you're just like, oh, because I have. And this is like the vibe. It feels like you've been purposely misled, even though there's no, like, how could they even do that, you know? But I swear to God, I just like her whole fantasy, like flying by in her mind. It's one of those where I'm like, I know how ridiculous this looks. This fantasy montage is so over the top. But also, let's be real. We all do this. We've all had little things where we're just like, no, but we were supposed to get married and have 3 kids. What? You know, like this got me. I loved it so much. Oh my God. So... the thing that's like really getting Father's attention in this scene is that Scar has alchemy despite whatever it is that Father did to make it impossible to use. And it's really alarming because the Father doesn't know why. He is just like, wait, how is this possible? Which again, I am going into this whole thing acting like if there's anything that we don't know about how alchemy works, it's because our characters haven't figured it out, but Father has. I've been sort of going with the whole, like, this dude is the one who knows, and he has been playing with everyone because they don't have access to whatever knowledge he has. But then here is a whole thing happening with Scar that he doesn't understand either. And so then we have another moment of me being like, what the fuck? Nobody knows anything. Why? So we have May creating a fist out of rock and punching Envy into the air, along with Ed and Al. And hers also works. Again, why? Don't know. But she is able to do this thing, creating a fist out of the floor. Why? I was like, well, maybe Scar has some, like, access to a certain type of power that they don't because of the tattoo on his arm. I was really coming up with, like, some Scar-specific explanations. And then she fucking does it. What? How? Was it just because they weren't there? Father seems to be under the impression I made a no alchemy zone. And if you pass by this like entryway, you can't use it. But it seems more like I used an EMP to bust everybody's abilities. And they were just like too far away for it to actually affect them. Except that Father doesn't. If you use an EMP, you usually know that there's a radius. And he doesn't seem to know that. So how many times has he done this? Has he never like tried to do this before? I don't know. So yeah, Ed says, I think this is the time to turn things around. And he yells to Scar, you want to know the truth about what started the war in Ishval? The truth about who shot that child and started the uprising? He's standing right there. It was Envy disguised as a soldier. And I love Envy is just like, yep. Not like, why would Envy be afraid of anybody? Look at the fucking size of Envy. And then Scar looks at Father and says, I'd like to hear more details about this in between your screaming. And as he says it, Gluttony jumps at him from behind, and he just reaches backward and grabs Gluttony's head and sends him flying. I really enjoy this because there's a moment where Gluttony's sneaking up on him. And you see Mei Chang go, oh my God, like she's going to warn him. Not only does he not need the warning, but he is just so unconcerned. And he's like, I'm going to send you to God. And then he's like, no, I'm not. I'm just going to send you to damnation. That's what you're going to get. So when we go to Mei Chang a couple times throughout this fight, as much as she is certainly violent, you know, she has her abilities and she is not afraid to use them. But there is a reaction in her to seeing the way that Scar behaves here. And it is very clear that she is like, oh, word? Okay. I didn't know it was like that, though. Like, I guess she has just never really seen him go all out. But she's like clutching her panda and just kind of like, oh, God, throughout a few of these moments. And Father tells Ling, go take care of the outsiders. And meanwhile, he handles Scar. So this is when we get the amazing moments of Greed chasing Ed and Mei Chang being like, wait a minute, I know that guy. And I had kept saying, like, I wonder if they know each other. And by this point, I had completely forgotten all about it. And of course, he isn't himself right now. So I really wonder what information we're going to find out about that. Because, you know, we've been taking it on faith that he is who he says and all of this. And I still think he probably is, but I don't know. And then we have Gluttony sneaking up behind her and chasing her around. All of this alchemy going, things exploding, chunks of masonry falling. And again, with the fucking Fowenheim standing off to the side, just like, that's weird. Well, how about that? He just doesn't seem invested. And I don't even know, like, it's probably not that he's not invested so much as he is so assured that he will come out on top that he isn't wasting his time wringing his hands, because he's just sort of, it feels like letting this play out for the fun of it and out of pure curiosity rather than it being, you know, against his plans. And this is when Scar runs up to him and grabs him by the face, and nothing happens. Eventually, even the like transmutation crackling goes away, and Scar still has him by the face as he says, well, you're clearly still transmuting. Physical destruction? No. Decomposition? Is it? And he lets go. Scar backs off because he's kind of clearly like, wait, hold on. And just as he lets go, there's that red crackling that we saw when he stamped his foot earlier. Not even stamped his foot. He really just took a step forward. And we have Scar in his mind saying, if I hadn't jumped, I think I would be a dead man. Basically, like if I had kept holding on to his hand or his head, I think is what he's saying. But it doesn't seem like that took his alchemy away at this point either. It seems like he can still, and again, with the fact that the father doesn't understand why he's still able to use it. I don't know. So we get Al running and grabbing Mei Chang and Xiao Mei and carrying her out. And she's like, I didn't tell you to save me. And he's like, yeah, you didn't have to. These people need you to be useful somehow, or else they aren't going to give a shit whether you live or die. In fact, it'll be easier if you just died for them, probably. And as he's running down the hallway and like, all right, we're heading out, Scar comes running after, and they wind up surrounded by these chimera. And Al tells Scar, can you get her to the surface? And Scar is like, I've killed your friend's parents and you're just going to let me go? And Al is like, don't get me wrong. Asking you for help is making me want to throw up, and I don't even have a body. I hate you, and I would definitely like to beat the shit out of you. But also, it's important to them that they not kill me, and I just don't want you guys to get hurt. I don't want her to get hurt, really. Scar says, I have no intention of turning my back on this place just yet. And he dunks his hand in the water of the sewer, generates an electrical shock that sends up a bunch of steam, grabs Al's head off the armor, and chucks it so that it creates a spark. And he basically does the thing that Roy did in the scene with Havoc. And I cannot get over how Al reacts. That was really rude. You could have at least warned me. What the fuck, dude? Honestly, that was the right reaction. You don't just grab somebody's head off their shoulders when they were just about to like let you run off into the sunset and be safe. That is not a way to pay him back. Just be like, hey, heads up. And as they're like, what do you mean? Then you grab their head. That's how you would do that in a polite way. And I love Envy showing up and being like, all right, okay, that was actually pretty good. I will give you that. And they look up and Scar is gone. And Al is like, well, where did he go? And Envy's like, I don't fucking know. All right, Gluttony, do your job. Track. And Gluttony is on the ground going, and Envy realizes, shit, you've used your regeneration way too much. You're dying, man. I'm sorry, but I think your body's kind of on its last legs. Then we go to Ed and Greed fighting. And Ed continually being like, Ling is in there. I know he's in there. And Greed being like, no, I swear he's not, dude. He's just not. And I like, too, the fact that because Greed doesn't remember, he doesn't remember Ed, he gets like this pleasant surprise of the fact that Ed is actually a good fighter. And it's like, oh, I thought I was just going to like crush you, but this is going to be fun. Okay, sweet. And he starts really getting into this fight. And there's a moment where Ed says, don't you even remember Lan Fan? And there's like a flash of shock on Ling's face. And I was like, oh shit. Am I wrong? Is Ling actually in there? I don't know. So here's the thing. If Ling is in there, how does that factor in? Like, what does it matter, basically, is what I'm asking. Who knows? Clearly, this is a different Greed, so I don't know. Yeah, the have you forgotten Lan Fan and him smashing his fist into Greed's face. There's, like I said, there's just a moment, and then all of a sudden, Greed grabs his arm, and he has him all tied up, and he says, I caught him. And Father just says, all right, bring him upstairs. He needs to be taken to Wrath. I want him brought there directly. And I don't like this. I don't like the fact that he just says upstairs to Wrath. So what, this place is like directly under Bradley's fucking office or something? Is that where we're located? Man. If Envy says, if you guys had just behaved, we would have let you go a long time ago. This didn't have to be like this. And it ends with Ed watching Greed and saying, Ling is in there, I know it. I don't understand this, though, because, like, when Father says upstairs, I want him taken directly to Wrath, he says this to Greed, who is holding Ed. And I'm assuming he was going to, like, walk up there carrying Ed because Ed is fighting all the way. But then when Al and Envy come in, Ed is suddenly, like, standing up on his own and Greed is walking away from him, like, so that Al can watch after him and theorize about whether Ling is still trapped inside to Al. I don't understand why they put him down. I thought the whole thing was, I've got him gripped up, so now I'm forcing him up the stairs. But it's like he gets put down and just sort of left to his own devices for a moment. I don't really understand what happened in that interim there, unless I missed something. But he literally was like holding Ed up in midair like a prize. So, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, this is a good episode, even though I still don't understand anything that's going on. I'm very into Greed being back, and being in Ling's body makes him very interesting. And where the fuck did Scar go? What's he up to? What are you doing, Scar? All right, well, I have to wrap. But thank you guys again. Sorry about these damn dogs. Thank you guys again for listening and hanging out with me. Thank you to Max for commissioning this and for coming and hanging out with us as well. And I'll be seeing you guys soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.